you know where your business would be without you. Imagine where it could go with more of you. Well, with Wix, you can create a website with more of your vision, your voice, your expertise. Wix gives you the freedom to truly own your brand and do it on your own. With full customization and advanced AI tools that help turn your ideas into reality. Scale up without being held back by cookie-cutter solutions and grow your business into your online brand. Because without you, your business is just business as usual. Take control. Go to Wix.com.
Tires matter. They're the only part of your vehicle that touches the road. Tread confidently with new tires from Tire Rack. Whether you're looking for expert recommendations or know exactly what you want, Tire Rack makes it easy. Fast, free shipping, free road hazard protection, and convenient installation options. Go to TireRack.com to see tire test results, tire ratings, and consumer reviews, and be sure to check out all the special offers. TireRack.com, the way tire buying should be.
If this were a Reese's TV ad, you'd be staring at a Reese's peanut butter cup. And sure, my voice is peanut buttery smooth, but still, you need to see the peanut butter cups, right? No? I can really just say Reese's and you'll go get some? Okay, Reese's. 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 Really working, actually. Reese's. Reese's. I'm on to something. Reese's. Reese's. Reese's.
One of the hardest parts of getting older is feeling like something's off in your body, but not knowing exactly what. It's not just aging, it's often your hormones too. When they fall out of balance, everything feels off. But here's the good news. This doesn't have to be the story of your next chapter. Hormone Harmony by Happy Mammoth is an herbal formula made with science-backed ingredients designed to fine-tune your hormones by balancing estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, and even stress hormones like cortisol. It helps with common issues such as hot flashes, poor sleep, low energy, bloating, and more. With over 40,000 reviews and a bottle sold every 24 seconds, the results speak for themselves. A survey found 86% of women lost weight, 77% saw an improved mood, and 100% felt like themselves again. Start your next chapter feeling balanced and in control. For a limited time, get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com with code NEXTCHAPTER at checkout. Visit happymammoth.com today and get your old self back naturally.
Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But DC politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
Hello, this is international football commentator Derek Ray, and you're listening to the Ranks FC podcast.
Hello, Rank Squad, and welcome to Ranks FC. It's your Champions League takeaway. Yes, back on a Tuesday night with the return of the Champions League to take a look at the first two quarter-finals. We'll do the second two in a Champions League takeaway that will come out on Thursday morning. But we're here to talk about Arsenal's 3-0 win over Real Madrid, a stunning 3-0 win at the Emirates, and also Inter winning 2-1 at the Allianz at Bayern Munich in a big result for the Nerazzurri and Simone Inzaghi. My name is Jack Collins, and I'll be your host today. And joining me, not across the water, but just down the Thames, is Mr. Dean Jones. How you doing, mate?
Hello, mate. Yeah, not across the pond. I'll tell you what, mate. I have to say one thing. I think I'm really struggling to adjust to like watching football in like real time. The time it's actually happening, like at night, basically. Like for me, it's usually like lunchtime. Usually sat there with a sandwich now, watching the Champions League. Not like after dinner. So, yeah, a bit strange. I'm going to bed after this. It's very late for me. But it was worth it because I've just watched Arsenal pull off probably the greatest night they've ever had at the Emirates. And Declan Rice put on an absolute super show.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a friend, Tommy, who just texted me, and he's not an Arsenal fan, but he just texted saying, that's the most exciting I've been about football in a long time, that absolutely filth. And I think
Yeah.
that there's probably something to be said for what Arsenal did there. Look, as you know, as a Republic of Ireland fan, it takes quite a lot for me to be happy for Declan Rice. But watching those 2 free kicks go in, I was like, yeah, that's pretty special. That's a pretty special double. Not only are they 2 absolutely beautifully struck free kicks, but to deceive the keeper not once, but twice, a keeper of Thibaut Courtois' standing, we should probably add, is pretty remarkable for any player. And to do it in the fashion that he did there, it's sort of take a bow, son kind of territory, I think.
It is, mate. Yeah, I mean, the first one they've compared to Roberto Carlos because of the way it went like outwards from the post. I mean, it's not obviously not like Roberto Carlos, but in terms of the
Hit it with
swerve,
the outside of his foot to begin with.
yeah, I mean, it's obviously
also hear this comparison. I was like, this is not like Roberto Carlos' Cornwall, although the swerve on it is impressive.
The swerve is impressive. Roberto Carlos was at the game, so they've come up with that. The second one is David Beckham-esque, fair enough. The second one, like the first one was great, and then the second one's lined up. Obviously, I'm staying at my parents' house at the moment while I'm back in England. And my dad, as the free kick was like being given, my dad just like walked out of the room. I was like, don't leave the room. It's like, what? I was like, this is going to go in. Like, this is going to go in. And I think everyone felt like that was going to go in. It felt like a penalty.
I was exactly the same. I was like, he's going to score here.
It was like, it was just going to happen. He was in such a good vibe. He was unstoppable. And I was like, Dad, don't leave. He goes, of course he's not going to score again. I was like, he is. And obviously belts it. As it went in, no lie, I got goosebumps. Like, I was like, whoa, I've actually got goosebumps from that. Like, it was, I don't support Arsenal. Nothing like support Arsenal. If anything, I was probably support Real Madrid. But it was a sensational moment. And the first thing I said to my dad at the time was like, my mate has been telling me he does this. Like, he has been telling me for years since he was at West Ham that Declan Rice is going to become one of not just the best dead ball specialists in the Premier League, but one of the best attack-minded midfielder like number 8 that there is around. And so when it went in, like, so my mate, he's a coach, and like he was Dec's friend / one-on-one coach. And so I left him with my mate. I just said, mate, you've been telling me about this for years. Here's the evidence. And he just left me. And I know as we were coming on, and he was just talking about how happy he was and stuff. But he was like, the thing is with Rice, he's needed to take responsibility and he's needed to step up. And it's really hard because the people that have been ahead of him in the queue to take such moments. So at West Ham, for example, Mark Noble, he mentioned, and obviously at Arsenal, he's got like Odegaard and Saka and whoever else like that fancies a free kick from that sort of range normally. And so he doesn't normally get a look in. But, you know, I think over the last year anyway, Dec's been growing as a player and as a leader. And he's played in a European final with West Ham. He's played in a European final with England. And yeah, in a way, this was the biggest game he's ever played. Real Madrid at home. And he's taken the responsibility to step up with those 2 massive moments that will help define his career. Like, this is the biggest day of his career. Even though he's had those games, this is the moment that kicks him onto another level. And it's not even just that. Even the third goal comes from like a surging run that he makes towards the corner of the box, lays it wide, and then the build-up comes in and Marino scores. This is such a big moment. And there was, look, the first half was pretty, not drab, like it was interesting, but it was nothing like this. So I wasn't sure we were going to see anything like this, but I've kind of got this big smile on my face, and I'm glad that there's a proper story, apart from just Real Madrid have lost in the Champions League to Arsenal. We've seen a player come of age.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a very, very impressive second half performance from Arsenal. Now, the first half, as you say, it wasn't drab, but there wasn't loads of clear-cut opportunities either. And it did feel a little bit like two teams feeling each other out. And when I was kind of previewing this game today on the radio, discussing what it would look like, and I was talking to Andrew Mangum, who runs Arseblog, and he basically was like, if this game turns into a basketball match, Arsenal are in real trouble. And we were discussing this thing that Real Madrid do where they give up possession in games like this. Not constantly. They don't end up with, 25% possession in games or anything like that. But often they will, if a game is becoming a little bit stale or they don't feel the opportunities are there, they will cede possession a little bit to their opposition to basically try and bait them into coming out and open up those spaces. And in the first half, there were a few of these moments where you were kind of watching it going, Arsenal have the ball here and Arsenal feel like they're in control. And Real Madrid are very good at this, luring teams into traps and then hitting them with both barrels whilst they are like, oh, hang on, where did that come from? And there were a couple of moments early on where Mbappe and Vinicius sort of threatened at getting in behind. There was one with a slip in the kind of midfield where the ball broke to Mbappe. He was flagged offside. Whether he was or wasn't is one that would have VAR'd, I think, if he'd actually put the ball in the back of the net. But you're kind of getting that feeling and that sense that Real Madrid were just kind of trying to work it out a little bit. And Arsenal were trying not to, having obviously looked at this and studied the tape and understood it, trying not to kind of commit too much when they had the ball because they were wary of being caught on the counter. And so it became a game of cat and mouse a little bit. But in the second half, there was a real change in attitude. And I think that, when a game is like this and when the atmosphere is like it was at the Emirates this evening, teams either rise to it or they crumble under that pressure. And we've talked about Arsenal in a number of different ways over the course of the last couple of years and talked about mental fortitude, talked about their ability to hold themselves together when the pressure is highest. And I think at 0-0 against Real Madrid at halftime in your home leg, that pressure really, really ramps up. And today, I think Arsenal answered a lot of questions that people might have had over whether they have that ability and mental fortitude to actually do this in the biggest games.
Yeah, I mean, they played like their season depended on it, and it did. And I didn't think they had that performance in them, especially with Marino playing as the centre forward. I didn't think that they would end the night like that with 3 goals coming from Marino and Declan Rice. But yes, there's a lot of questions been answered there. Really interesting, actually. On Twitter straight away, I went on to have a quick look to see what was going on. The first things that came up on my feed straight afterwards, one was from a journalist in England called Sam Dean, sort of one of the great Arsenal nights in history.
Sam J. Dean, actually, he's actually got all 3 of the original members of the rank squad in his name.
Yes, yeah, Sam J. Dean is literally his tag. That is right. He said, Arteta took over a team that was hobbling through the Europa League group stages, and now they've just spanked Real Madrid in the Champions League. Great point. The next tweet below was from Football Tweets, and it just says, what's happened to Vinny Jr.? And they've shown his score from the game of 5.9. And I mean, that's a fair point. And then the next one below that was from an account called The Touchline. It said, Vinicius and Rodrigo both completed 0 dribbles versus Arsenal tonight. Real Madrid, if anyone can force a comeback,
Real Madrid at the Bernabeu.
It's Real Madrid at the Bernabeu.
4-1 to Derby years and years and years ago, back when it was the European Cup, and then won the second leg 5-1 at the Bernabeu. So it's not unprecedented. So I would like to just stress that, and I'm sure that there is 0 Arsenal fans saying tie done. Right?
No, exactly, because they know too that this Arsenal team can be fragile. Like that this team, as good as they were tonight, that can turn quick if Real Madrid race out of the traps in the Bernabeu. But this is a test for them. There's no sign of it at the moment, domestically or in this game, and we know that they are not the best versions of themselves, and their star players are not playing like the stars that they are, but they can turn it on in moments and in football games, and the feelings that people feel in football games can change very quickly and you can feel like you're on cloud 9 very fast, in that belief grows in you. Arsenal and Declan Rice particular will be feeling 10 foot tall tonight. But you can feel like you're shrinking in a place like the Bernabeu very quick. So let's see. But this is, what a game we got in store there, with knowing that Madrid have to just come out and knock on the door from minute one. That's what you want to see Real Madrid doing. And so that's what makes it even more fun now.
Little shout for Jakub Kivior, by the way, who before this game, and obviously got put on skates a little bit at times in both the Fulham game by Adama Traore and the Everton game. And there was a lot of worry about him going into this. And in the first couple of minutes, there was a little bit of like, ooh, this isn't particularly pretty. We're going to have to see how this pans out. But once Arsenal got a foothold in the game, I don't think he put too many foot wrong. And actually, when you kind of look at that performance, considering there's a lot of people saying play Urian Timber and Ben White together, it doesn't really matter which one of them's at centre-back. Make sure that one of them's in there alongside Saliba and we'll work it out from there. I thought that was a pretty assured performance from him in the middle, considering the opposition he was up against.
Yeah, definitely. We just did a show last week on Champions League MVPs. I think we got it wrong, but they were all very, very important in their own right, weren't they? Here, and yeah, Kivior wasn't near that conversation at the time, but we thought Gabriel was playing when we recorded that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Kivior probably wasn't near that conversation tonight either, but I just thought it was a decent performance in the middle. Do you know who was, though? Bukayo Saka, who actually was Arsenal's main attacking threat. And I know that sounds a bit ridiculous when Declan Rice scored twice, but both of those free kicks came from Bukayo Saka winning the foul in the opposition or by the edge of the opposition box. And also, considering it was David Alaba he came up against. Now, whether that was the right decision or not from Carlo Ancelotti probably begs a question, considering the options that he has available to him at left back to throw Alaba out there. And it just felt like maybe that was the wrong move, considering he's coming back and still working his way back from a very, very long-term injury. So that's a question mark. But Bukayo Saka turned him inside out at points tonight. And considering he's only back from an injury of his own 2 games ago, that was a very composed, assured performance where he showed the best version of himself. Yeah,
absolutely. We got, was it just over an hour? Yeah, we got longer. Yeah, 74 minutes we got of Bukayo Saka. Hopefully he's fine on the back of it. But yeah, they've been, getting him ready for this game. We know that. And, the last couple of games, people have been thinking, Saka might start. But it would have made no sense for Saka to start that. So this was the one he needed to start. And Real Madrid will be very disappointed that he was available to play for 74 minutes. But let's see, mate. It's a very interesting game that we now have on the cards going forward. But surely in a week's time, Arsenal fans can now head to Madrid, really, really looking forward to their little trip.
Just in terms of Real Madrid, let's talk about it for a little while, because we've had a variety of questions on them over the course of the season. And we got one on Monday on our postbox on Patreon from one of our Real Madrid supporting listeners, who basically said, I'm used to Real Madrid not turning it on for the entirety of the season. What I'm not used to is seeing Real Madrid play like this in April. And I thought it was an interesting point, because we are used to seeing Real Madrid kind of work their way through the gears over the course of a season. We are used to seeing them kind of turn it on in the Champions League when they haven't really needed to turn it on elsewhere at times. Mm-hmm. But there's a sense of the underwhelming about them at the moment. And considering, at the start of the year, we were talking about Kylian Mbappe and the way that it potentially decentralized the team, destabilized the attack a little bit. Now, considering he has scored the amount of goals that he has over the course of his first season, he's on course to pass Cristiano Ronaldo's record for the goals in a first season. And I think the kind of general narrative has shifted away from the fact that Kylian Mbappe has been, a destabilizing force, and actually more towards actually Mbappe's been pretty good. But there still doesn't seem to be something right. Now, maybe that's Vinicius Jr. coming through a cold patch at a time where he normally heats up. Maybe it's the fact that there's no right backs and Fede Valverde is being forced to play there, which is potentially shifting them off a little bit in the midfield. Perhaps it's the balance of all of it. But watching Real Madrid play like this and like they did against Valencia at the weekend, and even like they did in that tie against Real Sociedad, who have been pretty poor over the course of this season overall, and yet managed to score 4 times at the Bernabeu and send that game all the way to the 120th minute mark in the Copa del Rey semi. It just doesn't feel like it. This feels like kind of Real Madrid November, maybe at a push January. It does not feel like Real Madrid April.
Yeah, I think that there's a real, from this game particularly, a lack of intensity, maybe? Like, I felt like Arsenal were too comfortable. You don't expect to be comfortable when you play against Real Madrid. That's not what they do. This is a defeat that will really, really hurt Madrid fans because they were swept aside and they never really looked like it was hurting them. You know, even after the second Declan Rice free kick goes in, you know, Mbappe is laughing a bit, and I'm not like knocking him for that, but it's a little bit like, I know you're laughing because like, well, what can we do about that? What you could do is like stop Arsenal from keep getting into these threatening areas in and around your box and like be a bit more physical around them, but not by fouling them, but like by actually getting on top of this game. Because it feels like you haven't done that for like proper periods of time. You've had your moments, but I was kind of surprised that they didn't have any urgency about them. And I guess that kind of has been a result of the way that they've gone through this La Liga season. Do they play like a team, Real Madrid? Really? Not a lot of the time. Like, they're relying on Valverde to play well. They're relying on Mbappe or Vinny or Bellingham to go through their moments in a season when they deliver. But there's not that collective responsibility that there was. Perhaps they miss Toni Kroos still in that sense. I mean, it's
definitely miss Toni Kroos. They definitely miss a midfield controller. That's fine. And, you know, Luka Modric,
Camavinga's not here.
Midfield class is 39 years old right now. And if you're looking for intensity in that midfield, then it's not going to be the same as he was 5-6 years ago, you know, at minimum. Camavinga sent off, obviously, towards the end of this one. It didn't matter. He was booked. So he was going to miss the second leg anyway, which means they're going to have another reshuffle. Now, Tchouaméni will come back in after his suspension clears. But it does just feel like the balance of the midfield is off. And for so long, that midfield trio, that triumvirate of Kroos, Modric and Casemiro was the bedrock on which all of the success rested, right? Yes, there were brilliant players in other positions, but that was the fulcrum of how Real Madrid operated. And when they went out and picked up players like Camavinga, like Valverde, and, you know, even Jude Bellingham last summer, but before that, you know, you're looking at these players that have come in. You're thinking, well, they've just future-proofed this, haven't they? They've brought in players who are going to be able to play these roles and move forward. And yet that transition of power hasn't been anywhere near as smooth as perhaps we expected to be. And Kroos seems to be the one who's irreplaceable, a midfield controller who's able to actually pick out those passes. And, you know, when games get tough, when games get intense, and in moments where Real Madrid have needed just to cool it off. And like you say, after the second goal, even after the first goal, you take the sting out of that game, right? You at 1-0, you're like, okay, it's fine. We're back at the Bernabeu. At 2-0, you still probably fancy yourselves. And look, Real Madrid, David Heitner in The Guardian has called them the team that have the patent on voodoo-style comebacks, which I did really, really enjoy. So at 3-0, you don't write them off. But I think that a Real Madrid of a year ago, they close this game down if they're 1-0 down. They shut it down, and they definitely shut it down at 2-0 down. They just kill the game dead. They knock the ball around. Toni Kroos just pulls all of the sting out of the game. And they felt like they had no ability to do that with the players on the pitch today.
Yeah, mate. I mean, I'm just counting quickly here because I was like looking at how many goals they've conceded recently. They've kept 2 clean sheets in, I think it's 17 games. Right? The recent record, they've conceded 3 against Arsenal tonight. They conceded 2 against Valencia last time out. They conceded 4 goals against Real Sociedad. Leganés scored twice against them. Villarreal got 1. Arsenal are going to go to the Bernabeu and score. So they've got to score 5. There's all the evidence that tells us Arsenal are going to go there and score. So the comeback is even harder. because they're not that good. Like, I kind of, on the post box that we did on Patreon on Monday, like, I only didn't really speak in great detail about La Liga, but I conceded at the end. Like, I was wrong about Real Madrid winning La Liga, and I didn't believe Barcelona could come back into it and hold on and win it. And for the first time after the weekend, I was like, I'm wrong. They are going to win it. They are going to win it this season. And this is a big problem. You know, Real Madrid have got this to come back from. They've got the final coming up against Barcelona. They've got this title race, and they've got Ancelotti's job on the line. It's a real, you know, the backlash is going to be pretty fierce here, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued to see what the Spanish papers make of this tomorrow. But I can't imagine there's going to be very much in the way of sympathy.
No, it's not going to be good.
There was 10 minutes. I think is probably the thing I would point out. There was 10 minutes around the 30, 35-minute mark where Real Madrid put together a period of sustained pressure. But outside of that, I really cannot recall a moment in this game. You know, I had most eyes on the Inter Bayern game, so I had this on the second screen, I will admit. But I can't recall a moment of this game that outside of that spell where Real Madrid looked in complete control of it. Because even the other opportunities, the early Mbappe one, etc., come from that kind of trying to draw Arsenal on and counter. That, to me, yes, Real Madrid excel in those sorts of situations. And I appreciate that, you know, I've already spoke about the fact that they do try and drag teams onto them and lure them into that false sense of security. But they don't do that for 90 minutes. There are periods of games where Real Madrid dominate and they siege the edge of your box. And you have to kind of deal with all of these world-class players working together in tandem in really small areas. That's what they're best at. But I just don't really recall them being able to kind of gain that kind of control over the course of anything apart from that spell towards the sort of middle of the first half.
Yeah, I wasn't there. I mean, I've just gone to a page on X, Madrid Universal. They've posted a couple of pictures, one of the Bernabeu, one of like a team coach arriving at the stadium with like, you know, the smoke and all the fans and the flags. And it just says 1% chance, 99% faith. But the top reply at the moment is, we shall see a Real Madrid match we have never seen before on next Wednesday, and our team will need to play for the badge for the first time this season. And it's, you know, it kind of sums up where we are at here, because they will, you know, the fan base, they won't believe it's possible in a sense because they haven't seen this team playing as a collective for a long time. Yet at the Bernabeu, they've seen this team pull off miracles many times. You know, we're already getting the players. Raul Asensio has just said, we need the Bernabeu, we need our people. And it's all going to come down to emotion and memories and nostalgia now. And that's what they need to evoke.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Bernabeu comes alive in moments where Real Madrid are in the most kind of mortal danger, I think. And you've seen it before, not just in the Champions League, but I remember a game actually against Real Sociedad, not the one in the Copa recently. It was a couple of seasons ago. And they went 1-0 down and the Bernabeu sort of shrugged. It was a league game and it was a relatively important game in terms of the title race. It was a tight title race at the time. The Bernabeu sort of shrugged at them being 1-0 down. And then they went 2-0 down and it got to about 60 minutes and suddenly the place came alive. And you were like, oh, that's weird. 2-0 down and, you know, it's 15 minutes into the second half. And that's the moment that the crowd starts to respond. These moments of sort of peril are what the Bernabeu does best. And they will know from the outset next week that the peril level here is very, very high. The Real Madrid are right in the danger zone. And it could inspire an atmosphere that I think we haven't seen in quite some time. Whether that will be enough, though, one of these things that we kind of talk about is Real Madrid creating opportunities, right? But this Arsenal defensive line stood incredibly strong. And in William Saliba, they maintain one of the best defenders in world football right now, who is, a worthy adversary. We saw David Raya make a good stop from Kylian Mbappe, but also just command his area really well, wind the clock down nicely and, take in any of those dead ball threats that were happening. This is a very well put together Arsenal back line. And if we have commended Arsenal for one thing consistently over the course of the season, it has been their defensive resilience as much as anything else.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Yeah, it's there's so much going on here on the back of this game, and you could do like a show a day now, just previewing the next one, because there's so many storylines to come out of it. But most of them are actually from Arsenal have just turned in the best result under Mikel Arteta, the best result Emirates has possibly ever seen. And yet the story really is Real Madrid.
Yeah, I was thinking about this.
It's weird.
I was thinking about the Emirates. The Emirates needed, you know, when you get a stadium, and obviously the Emirates isn't new anymore, but has it had a night like this? The glitz, the glamour, the opposition.
Like no.
And I was thinking about the rendition of North London Forever afterwards. And look, I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. I know a lot of people don't like it, whatever. Ultimately, I've said this from the start, that whilst people be like, well, it's new, it's not a tradition. You know, if you haven't got one, you start a tradition somewhere, right? And nights like this are the kind of things that people remember the rendition of North London Forever for. And that could be quite something in terms of what it turns into, etc. That's the first kind of version or variation or rendition of it after the game I've heard, where I was like, ooh, that's pretty special.
Yeah. It is, and look, it is a good. I liked the song before it became there.
I like Louis Dunford, and I like the song before they started playing at the Emirates. But it
totally like that EP, like that. The songs that went with that one when it came out, they were all great, and like they were very emotive, and they all brought all these feelings through, and like love it. This is obviously now taken away from that a bit because it's now an Arsenal song. But fair play to them for latching on to something like this, because it is a great song, and it is about them. And it's about where they're from, and that's fine. The Emirates needed something like this because it, you know, it's had its fair share of stick throughout the years. I mean, we've had times. Think back to when, you know, Granit Xhaka getting booed off by after. You know, it wasn't that long ago.
We were there.
Wasn't that long ago when they're booing their own players. So yeah, Arteta's brought his team a long way, and the Emirates seemed like it was rocking tonight.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations to Arsenal. A massive, massive win over Real Madrid. And we shall see if the Bernabeu can do its voodoo-style thing in the second leg next week. We're going to take a break there. When we come back afterwards, we're talking about the other game that happened tonight between Bayern Munich and Inter, which saw plenty of drama of its own. Stick with us. Hello, Rag Squad. When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds or Aviator Nation, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand and brilliant marketing, but an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the businesses, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, who are home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning that there are way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. So, if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. It's no secret, businesses that want to grow with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/ranks.
You know where your business would be without you. Imagine where it could go with more of you. Well, with Wix, you can create a website with more of your vision, your voice, your expertise. Wix gives you the freedom to truly own your brand and do it on your own, with full customization and advanced AI tools that help turn your ideas into reality. Scale up without being held back by cookie-cutter solutions, and grow your business into your online brand. Because without you, your business is just business as usual. Take control. Go to Wix.com.
Tires matter. They're the only part of your vehicle that touches the road. Tread confidently with new tires from Tire Rack. Whether you're looking for expert recommendations or know exactly what you want, Tire Rack makes it easy. Fast, free shipping, free road hazard protection, and convenient installation options. Go to TireRack.com to see tire test results, tire ratings, and consumer reviews, and be sure to check out all the special offers. TireRack.com, the way tire buying should be.
If this were a Reese's TV ad, you'd be staring at a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. And sure, my voice is peanut buttery smooth, but still, you need to see the peanut butter cups, right? No? I can really just say Reese's and you'll go get some? Okay, Reese's. Reese's. Really working, actually. Reese's. I'm on to something. Reese's.
Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But DC politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
Welcome back to Ranks FC. Jack, you've done a great job there because you've just got properly involved in that conversation, and it's not actually the one you were supposed to be watching tonight. I was designated to watch that game. You were designated to watch Bayern versus Inter, and I'm not as good as you at this. I can't double screen. I'm just not good at it. So I focus on what I'm focusing on. So I'm really sorry. I can't add barely any insight apart from a couple of Harry Kane chances I saw from the first half, because I saw him at half-time of my game. So come on, mate, you'll have to fill us in here. How did this one open up?
It's funny, isn't it? Actually, just in terms of that is the generation gap in terms of our journalistic careers. Isn't it?
Probably is.
Like, I have to go and watch a game live, where I was like, I've got to do live text for 3 games at once.
True.
So that's just par for the course in terms of the way we were raised as journalists. But I did double screen, and I'm glad I watched this game because it was really, really intriguing from start to finish, like a proper end-to-end encounter. Not necessarily in terms of the way it played out stylistically, but in terms of how the two teams approached it. And look, it was marked as this big attack versus defense thing, which I think potentially does a little bit of an injustice to the fact that Bayern are much improved defensively over the course of this season, and potentially to the fact that Inter are also very good going forward. But it did play out a little bit like that. So it started this game with Bayern very much on the front foot. They took the game to Inter, as you would expect. There was a huge tifo in the Allianz beforehand, with Bayern basically saying kings of the cup, which potentially is a little bit of a disservice to Real Madrid, but you could probably make a decent argument that behind Real Madrid, Bayern are perhaps the club who have the most aura or the most kind of nostalgic link with the Champions League. And considering their domestic dominance over the course of their history in Germany, you could make a fair case that tifo is fair. So fine. And they responded to it, considering that Bayern are beset with injuries, and look, Inter have their own as well. And we'll come on to kind of both sides of that. I thought that they started the game in a very interesting fashion. Now, when the lineups came out and Rafael Guerreiro was posted as playing number 10 in Jamal Musiala's absence, I was a bit skeptical. I'll be like, I'm not 100% sure that's where Rafael Guerreiro is going to be playing. I wondered if Vincent Kompany might have been playing Stanisic as a sort of left centre-back and Guerreiro as a wing-back to try and match up against this Inter formation, which we all know exactly how Inter are going to line up every time. They play that 3-5-2. They play it exceptionally well. It wasn't. It was Rafael Guerreiro as a 10, which one shows you why Bayern aren't renewing Thomas Muller's contract, although we'll come to him. And 2 was an interesting tactical decision from Vincent Kompany. And you know what? For the first half an hour, it worked quite nicely, because actually what Guerreiro brought in that role was a real intensity. He pressed really hard from the front. It became a 4-4-2 out of possession, and he was the one leading the press rather than Harry Kane. And I was a bit shocked by it in terms of, oh, that's what they're doing here. But it seemed to confuse Inter a little bit as well, because they were not expecting this kind of tiny dynamo running around being the main pressing device that Bayern utilised. So for a while it worked. And there was this kind of really interesting first 20 where Bayern really got control of the game and they created the better chances. Michael Olise fizzes one wide pretty early on. And then Harry Kane hits the post with an absolute sitter that you would expect him to bury 9 times out of 10. It's rolled to him on the sort of edge of the 6-yard box, but a little bit further back, and he curls it into the far corner. And you're just sitting there expecting the net to ripple. And instead it clips the outside of the post and goes wide. It's probably not a sitter for anyone else, but I think it's a sitter for Harry Kane.
Yeah.
And I think considering the goal-scoring form that he's in, it's not disrespectful to suggest that he should score at that moment. And that's a moment where Bayern are really on top. Now, Inter sort of claw their way back into the game, and they start to find these little triangles and these little like passing sequences out of the back that start to stretch it, and they'll find these little switch balls across to either fullback. There was no Fede DiMarco, which I was surprised by. He went for Carlos Augusto at left wing back, and it turned out to be a pretty inspired decision again from Simone Inzaghi. But they work this out, and then suddenly they start to sort of get into these areas where they're creating chances, and a couple of them hit the side netting, but then into score from their first shot on target. And it's one of those goals that you think, well, this is vintage Inter. The ball gets worked out to the wing back, fires forward, a ball comes into the middle, Marcus Thuram gets it, lays it off, and Lautaro knocks it home. And you're thinking, well, that is absolutely vintage. They've not only scored
MVP
shot on target, but also the Thuram Lautaro link up, finding its way in there, having come from the wing back threat. It was all very, very impressive and all very, very Inter. And at that point, you're thinking, okay, this could get very interesting now. And Inter take control of the game after they score. And suddenly it's like, oh, where are you going here? Because I figured, and something we spoke about on the radio earlier today, was if Inter score the first goal, this tie could be done. Not just this game, this tie could be done, because we all know how good they are from a defensive perspective. They'd conceded 2 goals in the entire Champions League before tonight. And Bayern had been knocking at the door and creating chances, but hadn't found a way to break down that rear guard. And you're thinking, well, it's only going to get tighter from here. They're going to sit further back. And they didn't. They actually took the game to Bayern at that point, and there are a couple more chances. Jonas Urbig makes a really, really impressive save at the start of the second half to stop it being 2-0 and potentially stop the tie going dead. And then the momentum starts to swing back the other way again. Now, I don't know if this is because Inter were comfortable a 1-0 up and just like, you know what, we could take a 1-0 lead back home and we will be able to see that out at San Siro. And you would back them to do so. And Bayern sort of bring on a couple of key players. There's an absolute raft of changes that are made by Company all in one go, one of which is bringing on Thomas Müller to play in that number 10 role. And he first of all nearly scores with one that gets pulled back to him. And then just as I think the game is kind of dying a death, the 87th minute, he does score. The ball's pulled back to him at the back post and he sticks it home. And it's real old narrative FC strikes again, right? Like Thomas Müller come on here in the week where he's basically been like, I would have liked to stay, but Bayern have decided they're getting rid of me, comes on and scores the absolutely crucial goal for his team in a major...
Did he do a horse celebration?
He did not do the horse celebration. In fact, he did a very Thomas Müller thing, which was he went to get the ball. I was like, let's get back on with this. And then the crowd's up, they play this song, everyone's going mad, they play the little circusy thing, and everyone is wild. The crowd's really going for it. And Bayern sort of force a couple of turnovers in Inter's half, and you're thinking, oh God, maybe they can. Maybe that is the moment that really turns it around. Maybe they can. But you flip it, and there is this thing where the ball bounces through to Jan Sommer, and he goes to sit on it for a second.
Yeah.
Then he realizes that he doesn't need to, and he plays it out, and Inter scythe through at the other end. A minute after Thomas Müller has scored this equalizer, the ball flies out to Carlos Augusto, who marauds down the flank, gets in behind, and swings the ball in for Fratesi, who's come on as a substitute. He sort of hits him on the knee and goes in, and he goes berserk. Inter go berserk. The bench goes berserk. And for the second time over the course of the night, the Allianz is completely and utterly stunned into silence. And even then, there are opportunities for Bayern to get a late equalizer, Inter snaffle them out, and they end with a 2-1 win that they will be very, very comfortable with going into this second leg, considering how good they are from a defensive perspective, but also considering they know that they can score goals at the other end. Yeah. So a strange night, because Inter score with their first shot on target. They then have a really good spell. They retreat into themselves to basically set up the barricades and be like, we're going to take this 1-0 home. They concede to a lovely finish from Thomas Müller. And in that moment, They decide, we're not having that. They go back up the other end, and with their next shot on target and their first shot after the Bayern goal, they score what turns out to be the winner from Fratesi. And I think you're kind of looking at it and thinking it was a very different game to the Arsenal and Real Madrid game. It was more of an even keel in terms of where the battle felt it was. It felt like the game was played mostly by Bayern Munich, but relatively on Inter's terms, I would say, for a lot of it. And they come out victorious. And I think that the difference here is probably just the experience of getting things over the line with the current group of players. And I think that there is that sense of inevitability that surrounds Inter. Now, they haven't been at their best this season. They are still very much in a title race with Napoli in Serie A. They have not been at their vintage best in pretty much any of the competitions they've been in, and yet they have found a way to remain in them. Yes, they obviously lost the Supercoppa in Italy to AC Milan, but you look at where they are in the Coppa Italia and their level in the semi-final with a home leg to come. You look at where they are now in the Champions League and they are 2-1 up in a quarter-final with the home leg to come. And you look at where they are in Serie A, where they are top of the standings despite having playing on multiple fronts in a way that none of their real contenders are. And also, the fact that they are still there and on top at the moment, despite the fact that they haven't been at their best, despite the fact that they have slipped up in moments this season. I think it just goes to show exactly what this team is made of, that even with the rotations, even with the fact that Inzaghi cannot keep the same 11 week in, week out for a variety of reasons, but mostly I think because he wants to give the depth players the minutes that they're going to need when it comes to the end of this season. And that last point is probably where I would finish on it. Because how many teams have we seen this season come through and be like, we get to this point in the year and there are major injuries? We've just talked about it happening for Real Madrid. We've talked about it happening for Arsenal. There were major injuries for Bayern to deal with here. Neuer out, Alphonso Davies out. So really big players, missing from this team. Upamecano and Ito as well, which meant that Eric Dyer played in his first Champions League game since I think the beginning of the season. There were key members missing. Musiala, the obvious one as well. But Inter's injury list is as long as anyone else's. The difference is that since the very start of this season, Simone Inzaghi has rotated this team on a regular basis. We said at the start of the year that their depth was incredible, and it might be one of the reasons they have the ability to go far in all these competitions. What I wasn't expecting was them to have used that depth quite so much over the course of the season. And it's meant that the consistency maybe hasn't been there in quite the same way. But it does mean that when players come off the bench or when players get starts in games that perhaps they wouldn't expect to with injuries or suspensions or whatever it is, they are already ready to step up. And I think that could be the difference in what pushes Inter over the line in a number of competitions this season. I'm not sitting here saying they're going to go and win this, but I think that they have a good a chance as anybody because even with their injury list, even with the fact that certain players are not on form, the depth pieces have had the exposure this season to be able to make a difference. And we saw it happen again here with the winner, with Carlos Augusto, who's very much second choice left back behind Fede Di Marco, but gets the start here anyway, crossing the ball for Fratesi, who comes off the bench and hasn't been a key member of this team all the way through the season, but has had enough reps that he knew where to be in that exact moment. I think that matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Good analysis, mate. That's a long spell you just spoke for, because I had nothing to say. So I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously injuries have hurt Bayern seemingly more. And they've also hurt me, haven't they? Because I backed Bayern and I needed them to win here because I feel like this is really an uphill battle now to turn this one around. I've been very optimistic and hopeful in a sense that the Bayern would back me up on the pitch with what I've said about them on this pod as we got into the knockout stages, that they could go and be one of the favourites to actually win it. But this is a big defeat. And like you say, the Kane misses a part of that narrative. And maybe they can turn it around because they do still have that game-changing ability. But if anyone can see our game plan, it's Inter Milan, really. So, yeah, that is a big goal to come up with after Bayern have made it 1-1. And to take the sting out of it so quickly, score in the 88th minute, that'll really hurt Bayern Munich.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've talked about inexperience, right, over the course of this. And I don't necessarily mean just with this Bayern team, because there's a lot of players on that park who have experience of not just winning multiple trophies with this club, but also who know how to deliver. This is Bayern's 7th season in a row, reaching the last 8 of the Champions League. They know what this competition entails. So many of this squad were there when they won this in 2020. But I think that inexperience in the dugout might be the difference, right? We've talked about this before, but on one hand, you have Simone Inzaghi, who has had so many reps with this Inter team and knows exactly how to play his cards in these moments in order to get the best out of certain players. And some of the decisions are surprising, right? That Fede DiMarco one blew my mind, because when I was kind of trying to work out where this game would be won or lost, one of the big things I thought was, down that left flank could be a major, major one, because Konrad Laimer will want to tuck back inside at points. We know that the right-hand side of the defense is not going to be as strong without Upamecano or Ito there, and maybe it's going to be Eric Dyer that steps into that breach. That's where I would be looking to go. If I was this inside, that's where I'd be looking to attack. And he brings on Carlos Augusto, and he's the man who basically becomes this big marauding threat down the left-hand side. Now, he has that in his locker, sure. But where I place him in the kind of pecking order of fullbacks or wingbacks in the world is quite a long way below Fede DiMarco. And yet that choice proves to be the one that unlocks the door. And there was no change there. It wasn't like he brought DiMarco off the bench and he was there ready to be used. He kept faith with Carlos Augusto, and he rewards him by making the final goal, making that goal that changes the course of this game. And that is the experience that he has with his team, Inzaghi, that perhaps Company doesn't have just yet with this Bayern side. I think whatever happens from here, I think this will go down as a good first season for Vincent Kompany. He's going to have wrested the title back to Bayern Munich from Bayer Leverkusen after what was, deemed a pretty awful year last season. And yet there's room to grow. And that's not necessarily to call him out. And this isn't really calling him out, because I think he's come up against a very, very good Inter side now. But from my money, they now have 1 foot in the semi-final.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you that. I think 1 foot. Yeah, I think you've summed it up perfectly, and that's exactly where that was heading. So a big night, mate. That was a very big night of football action in the Champions League.
Okay, well, on that note, I think we might leave this episode there, Dean. The first of our 2 Champions League takeaways over the course of this week. The second of these, which will be looking at Wednesday's games between Borussia Dortmund and Barcelona, and the other one between PSG and Aston Villa, will come out on Thursday early doors. We're not going to record that one on Wednesday night because of logistical reasons, but we will record it first thing Thursday morning. So that should be out for you before too long, especially those of you listening in the US. I'm sure that it'll be out before you wake up either way. But for now, what's left for me to do is say thank you very much to Mr. Dean Jones.
Cheers, mate.
I've been Jack Collins. This has been Champions League Takeaway on Ranks FC. Thank you so much for listening as ever. And we'll see you all very shortly, Rank Squad. For now, take it easy. Peace.
Running a business can be exhausting. Building your website shouldn't be. With Wix, you can express your ideas, give direction, then leave the heavy lifting to AI. From site creation to branded content and images. Have fun with the details. Customize what you want the way you want. And manage your whole business from a centralized dashboard with expert AI tools. Build, scale, and enjoy the incredible results. You can do it all yourself on Wix.
Tires matter. They're the only part of your vehicle that touches the road. Tread confidently with new tires from Tire Rack. Whether you're looking for expert recommendations or know exactly what you want, Tire Rack makes it easy. Fast, free shipping, free road hazard protection, and convenient installation options. Go to TireRack.com to see tire test results, tire ratings, and consumer reviews, and be sure to check out all the special offers. TireRack.com, the way tire buying should be.
If this were a Reese's TV ad, you'd be staring at a Reese's peanut butter cup. And sure, my voice is peanut buttery smooth, but still, you need to see the peanut butter cups, right? No? I can really just say Reese's and you'll go get some? Okay, Reese's. 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 Really working, actually. Reese's. Reese's. I'm on to something. Reese's. Reese's. Reese's.